Hello and welcome again to this edition of Capital Dateline. I'm your host, Brad Swanson. We are coming to you from inside Florida's Capitol for what is the final week of the 2017 legislative session. I am once again joined by Jim Saunders, Executive Editor of the News Service of Florida, here to tell us what's happening this week, or at least what's happening today in the legislative session. Jim, welcome.
Thanks.
All right, so we're here last week. There's been some budget discussions over the weekend. Why don't we start with the budget, and then we'll move on to the other issues that they're going to work on.
Well, that's the most immediate thing they need to resolve is the budget. They did have conference committee meetings all weekend. There are a lot of major issues, or a lot of big issues still to be resolved. Between Senate President Joe Negron and House Speaker Richard Corcoran. I mean, the Conference Committee sort of made it as far as they can, and then it kicks upstairs, and now it's before the presiding officers. A couple of major issues they need to look at are healthcare funding. There's $651 million in cuts for Medicaid for hospitals, but they need to figure out how to distribute those cuts down through the system, which is an important issue. While it's a wonky issue, it's important, and there's a lot of people watching that issue. Another big thing is environmental and natural resources. The budget blew up during the conference committee this week, so they've got to basically piece together that entire budget, although a lot of the pieces already are in place. So those are a couple examples of what's been going on over the weekend. It's not unusual for the presiding officers to resolve the big issues in the end, but there are a lot of issues out there, and there's a lot of contentiousness right now around here on various issues.
Right, so we're still talking about some tax cuts that are out there, and those are definitely impacting the overall budget conversation. Where do some of the biggest tax cuts right now stand?
Well, one of the issues that's emerged in the last few weeks, Speaker Corcoran has very strongly pushed to put a proposed constitutional amendment on the 2018 ballot that would raise the homestead exemption by $25,000. This issue was not real prominent early in session, but it's become a major priority of the Speaker, and it's become tangled in other issues. So the Senate is going to take up that issue this afternoon. It's already passed the House. So that's one to watch. Another thing is that the House has a tax cut package that has tax holidays and those sorts of things in it, and the Senate Appropriations Committee this morning is taking that up. So they're trying to get all that moving, which is a priority of the House. I think one thing to keep in mind is some of the big things that Speaker Corcoran and President Negron came into session wanting are on track. Maybe all the details haven't been worked out, but they are on track. For example, President Negron has pushed to have a large increase in university funding. That looks like it's on track. There's House Speaker has pushed for Schools of Hope, which is a program to encourage charter schools to go into areas where traditional public schools have been failing. That looks like it's on track. Again, the details still may need to be worked out, but some of those big things that they push for all session do look like they're going to happen.
Well, so as we look at both the president and the speaker's priorities, and they're still on track, we're still going to go look at some other major issues outside of the budget that are, one, a constitutional amendment, approved marijuana, medical marijuana, that is, and then we've got other issues hanging out there. Why don't would you start with medical marijuana and tell us where that stands, and then if you can, maybe work through workers' comp and a few other issues?
Yeah, well, first off, I mean, all the big issues are going to usually get resolved at the end of the session, so that's not unusual. But medical marijuana, the legislature needs to pass a bill to implement the constitutional amendment that passed in November. The House and the Senate have taken different approaches on that bill throughout session, but the House started moving closer to the Senate at the end of last week, and the House is going to pass out its bill probably on Tuesday. Then the issue will go to the Senate. I expect them to come to agreement on that. They are moving closer together on it, and I think they realize they have to do something. Workers' comp is a little more tricky. Rob Bradley, the senator who's sponsoring that, has expressed confidence they're going to get agreement on that. But they've had two very different approaches on that issue as well. The Senate is supposed to take up their workers' comp bill on the floor today, voted out presumably tomorrow. But they still have some work to do to get together with the House on that. Big issue there is attorney's fees for the lawyers who represent injured workers. I mean, they're quite far apart on that. That's been the hot button issue throughout this whole debate, and they need to resolve that. There are other issues involved in that workers' comp. It's very complex, but I think attorneys' fees, if they can get that one worked out, everything else probably falls in place. The other issue that's been hanging out there for the last week or so is gambling. They started holding a formal conference committee on gambling. They met a couple times last week and exchanged some offers, but they still haven't reached an agreement on that. Again, very complex issue, a lot of political factors on all sides on that issue. And, so it'll be interesting to see whether they can bring home a gambling deal this week. They would like to, because they're trying to reach a agreement also with the Seminole Tribe on gambling, and that's all woven together, if you will. So those are a few big issues to watch. I mean, there's myriad other issues out there, but those are a few big ones.
Yeah, it's surprising to see that in the gambling conversation really this year that you're not seeing the gross amount of ads around the state surrounding this legislation. It all seems to be kind of being handled within the walls of the legislature versus in the public. Any thoughts on why that is with this bill?
Well, I think some of us were a little skeptical in the beginning whether they would actually get moving on a gambling bill or how far it would move. I mean, these issues come up every single year, and most years they've never made it this far. There are very difficult issues they still have to resolve, including slot machines, where slot machines can be in the state. And so, I don't think it's a done deal. They're going to get an agreement, but they're still working on it. And, it may be one of those things that as the budget moves forward, gambling will start moving forward as well. I mean, the budget's sucking up a lot of oxygen around here right now.
Yeah, as it should be, because they've got to get that. When do they need to get that filed by?
Well, the budget needs to be done Tuesday by the end of the day. So it has to be on their desks by the end of the day Tuesday, or close, I guess midnight or end of night Tuesday. But for them to end the session on time on Friday, it needs to be done on Tuesday. So there's going to be a whole lot of people pulling all-nighters tonight, probably.
Right. We're all buckled up and ready to camp out here at the Capitol. So let's take it outside the Capitol. It's definitely an honor to recognize the service of Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen. Long storied track record of service to the state of Florida. Where is the new service of Florida's thoughts on her tenure and what's next for that district?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday she announced in the Miami Herald that she was going to retire, not run for a re-election in 2018. She's represented Congress since 1989. She was the first Cuban American in Congress. She's been the first Hispanic woman, I believe, she was in the legislature before that. I believe she was the first Hispanic woman in the legislature. I mean, really, truly a lot of firsts. The other thing I think it's interesting about her is that through all this partisan divide that's occurred over the years, she has been pretty popular from a bipartisan standpoint. It was interesting yesterday to watch the reaction to her retiring or announcing her retirement. I mean, there was people ranging from Governor Scott, Adam Putnam, Marco Rubio praising her on the right, and then on the left there were people like Lois Frankel and Ted Deutsch, and some people are pretty liberal, just praising her effusively. So, the district that she is in was redrawn before the 2016 elections, and it is become a very strong appearing Democratic district. Hillary Clinton won it by a huge margin over Donald Trump in last year's presidential race. President Obama won it in 2012. So the Democrats see this district in Miami-Dade as a pickup opportunity, and they're looking to pick off these seats and try to narrow the margin with Republicans who control the congressional delegation. So you can expect that this is going to be a race that's going to get a lot of national attention. Democrats were already singing that signal yesterday, so on Sunday. So it's really a end of an era, if you will, for that area and with her retirement.
Yeah, well, obviously the Cable Association is going to thank her for her long storied professional service to the state of Florida, and she's a stateswoman that I think everybody can look up to. So, all right, Jim, well, thank you very much for your time today. We know everything's going to change and it'll be fluid from minute to minute, so we'll encourage our viewers to watch for new Service of Florida updates every minute, maybe not, but and then we'll see you back shortly in this week, and we'll have you on a few times this week to keep everybody updated. Thanks.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks. That's all the time we have for today's Capitol Dateline Online. If you can, hook us up on Facebook, Capitol Dateline Online, or connect with us on our Twitter feed at the FCTA. Thanks for tuning in.